Today's product has been on my personal audio bucket list ever since I got into this hobby, and I am excited to share all of my thoughts and opinions on this one. So let's get into it. What's cracking, everyone? My name is Ryan, and today we're going to be taking a look at the WA7 Fireflies. Now, this is the Gen 3 model. It retails in at $1,399. And before I get into this, I do want to send a big thank you to WU because I reached out to them, told them my interest in this device. They accommodated, they sent it out in exchange for all of my thoughts and all of my opinions. Hey everyone, really quick, if I can grab your attention, my 2024 resolution is to hit 5,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you haven't done so already, please join the channel, like the videos, and support me along the way. I also have a Patreon if you'd like to support me there as well. I would highly appreciate that, guys, and I will let you get back to the video. So the WA7 is more than what meets the eye when you first take a look at the beautiful aesthetics of this glass and all-in-one unit that you're going to see here. And I say all-in-one because it is. There is a DAC, there is a tube amp in here, there is also preamp outs so that you can use powered speakers or a speaker amplifier to plug into this to have everything going on your desktop with this one unit. All right, let's go ahead and run through the inputs and outputs of the amplifier. Now, starting with the back, you're going to notice that there is a USB-B input. Now, this is so that you can use it with a Windows, Mac, even mobile devices such as Android or Apple, and it is plug and play. Then there's a set of RCA inputs. Now this is if you want to use an external device, CD player, something like that, or even an external DAC. It will obviously bypass the internal DAC when you do that. Then you're going to see the AC inlet, pretty self-explanatory, but that's the power plug. Then you're going to see a switch next to that. Now that is for switching between either USB or RCA, so you can actually have them both plugged in if you want. Just make sure you got the right switch on for what you're choosing. And then you're going to see the pre-out panel. Now the pre-out panel does have 3.5 and 4.4. What's important to note here, the 4.4 is going to get you 3.7 volts out. The 3.5 is going to get you 1.7 volts out. WU does recommend using the 4.4, and obviously got to have the right adapter, whether you're going to plug it into some powered speakers or a speaker amp, just because you're going to get the most power out of this to power your devices. That's why it's recommended to go that route. Now the amp build-wise is anodized aluminum on the chassis. It comes in silver or black, and I was really glad they were able to get me the black to check out because I like black. I have a lot of lights, I know, but I like black especially. And then the glass is just a super thick glass. I mean, we're talking like, this could probably be bulletproof. This glass is so thick. And it just kind of goes right over these tubes, which, by the way, these tubes are 12 AIO tubes. Now, these are the stock tubes that I use for the purpose of this video. I don't have alternate tubes to roll, but this just easily drops, slides on here. There is a little bit of give to it. Obviously, you're going to get fingerprints, so if you got microfiber cloth, you can wipe away those fingerprints. And it's pretty heavy. It's 8.5 pounds, so this is no lightweight unit that we have here. Now, going around to the front, you're going to see the volume pot here. It's a nice smooth volume pot. You have a 4.4 and a 6.3 output. 4.4 is obviously for your balance. 6.3 is unbalanced, so just make sure you got the right adapter if you need to use 6.3 with something like IEMs that terminate to 3.5. The 4.4 is going to get you 1.5 watts out at the most power. So it is recommended if you want the most power out that obviously you go 4.4. Then you're going to see an LED light right above that. Now that LED light will come on when you're using a USB input. When you're using this as a pre-out, however, that is when that light will go off to let you know that it's powering out to something else. Now, lastly, I do want to also mention that when you turn this amp on, the tubes will have this glow effect. There are LEDs where the tubes are that gives it that glow, something like we saw on the WU Tube Mini, and I like that little aesthetic flavor they add to it. Obviously does nothing for the sound, just makes it look damn cool in my opinion. All right, now lastly, I do want to talk about the Saber DAC that is inside of this unit. It is an ESS Saber DAC. It is up to 384 kilohertz. It is DSD 256. It's 24-bit. In my opinion, Saber DACs in general, when I have heard them, tend to be a little bit more clean on their sound. And I think that is good that they used it in conjunction with this so that you can get the cleanest sound going into the tubes and let your tubes do a little bit of flavor to your audio. Let's talk about that flavor to the audio I just mentioned and talk about sound. All right, so I ran this thing through the gambit with either IEMs, planars, dynamic driver headphones that I have on hand. And what I can tell you is overall, the sound quality of this has a nice thick low end to it that has some of that tubey flavor. The mid-range is a little bit fluid, kind of like water. Water's fluid. But what I'm saying there with the mid-range is it's a little bit relaxed at times, and then that kind of continues into the upper mid-range, into the treble region to where it's smoothened out. Like if I had a good way to describe that, I would just say notes and things don't necessarily have that sharp edge to them. They have kind of that smoothened out nature to them. Don't mistake that for it not being detailed, because the ESS Saber DAC helps out a ton there to give you those details. It just kind of smoothens that out a little bit. Now, where I can tell you this worked really well was with something like my AIO Organic. The AIO Organic is very easy to drive, but it can be a little bit aggressive in that upper mid-range. Definitely can be bright for some people, and it smoothened that out and made that more of a fun and relaxing listen. It didn't completely deaden that aggressiveness of it. Make no mistake there. It still has that nature to it. It still gets a little bright. It still has a little bit of stabbiness and things on notes, but it just made it more of a fun and relaxed listen. Now, with the Meze Empyrean 2 that I just listened to, that was actually something that I didn't always care for, because the Empyrean 2 is more of a relaxed nature, in my opinion, on some of the mid-range. Now, does it tame that little bit of spikes in the sibilants? It doesn't, but it kind of smoothens out that top end. So there's times where this makes a fun pairing, but it also doesn't add to attack. And I like more attack to my headphones. That's why I like ZMF so much, because they have that dynamicness to them. And this doesn't really add to that. In fact, speaking of ZMF, I didn't care for the atrium close on this amplifier. Now, it drove it fine. I had plenty of power, so it wasn't an issue of that. It just made that mid-range a little too relaxed and fluid to where it sounded almost not scooped out, but just like I was missing something from that headphone that I really wanted to have. Now, it did the opposite with the O2R Classic. With the O2R Classic, it's a more aggressive upper mid-range, kind of like the AIO Organic is, and it just made it a fun sound out of the O2R Classic. And in fact, added that thickness still. The only thing it was lacking was a little bit of that attack nature, like I said, but it made the details and things of the Classic just such a wonderfully smooth listen while still being detailed. And then on the Dan Clark E3, which I love that headphone, that's why I bought it, I gotta say that was also hit and miss. Now with gaming, I love gaming on the E3 with this device because it's not so aggressive and it gives it that nice smoothened out mid-range and some thickness down low and gives you those details, as I said, up high. So playing video games and things, especially casual gaming, was just a lot of fun to enjoy. I would imagine that would sound great on movies and things like that as well. And I'm not talking about competitive gaming, like getting my KD ratio up, and I suck. I'm not even concerned about competitive gaming at this point, but just a lot of fun with that. And then IEMs. I gotta say, the noise floor is just dead quiet, but it did really well with IEMs. With my SimGot IEMs especially, they can be aggressive in that upper mid-range nature, and this smoothened that out a little bit, just enough to where I could enjoy them a little bit longer without being fatigued. And I found the same thing with the Let's Shure S12 Pro. It did the same thing. It is still a little bit of a bright IEM and a little bit V-shaped, like I said, but it smoothened it out a little bit, and I can see that really lending towards IEMs. And where it comes into play with the tubes is that smoothened out nature I keep talking about, that fluidity that I keep talking about, that nice thicker low end. That is something that the tubes are lending to you and given to you in the presentation. And you can roll the tubes on this, which I gotta imagine would be a lot of fun as well. Now, also, I would say easier to drive dynamic driver headphones. I've got the Harmonic Dyne Athena, the Sennheiser HD 560S. I've got my Tiger 300R. All of those headphones paired up really well with this and added all of those things I've already talked about to them, to where I can just say that if you're doing things like that with this amplifier, you're going to be good to go. You cannot pair this with a tungsten. You cannot pair this with a Susvara. It just doesn't have the power output to keep up with something like that. So you can say that's lacking there. I just think that's just a synergy thing, and that's just something you got to note with a different device when you're getting into it to have that information up front. All right, let's break this down, and I'll kind of do a conclusion and wrap this up. You know, I would say the things that I really didn't like about this were pairing it up with like my atrium closed. It's not going to take to hard to drive headphones. You got to be careful on what you're powering up with this amplifier. And then also I would say if you're somebody that likes a lot of attack and things, it's not going to add that to it. So those are probably some of my dislikes, but my likes outweigh that because I got to tell you, this pairs really well with IEMs and more sensitive headphones because I had no noise problems at all. In fact, if you get noise issues with an amp like this or any other tube amp, I would highly recommend to check your cables first, especially if you're going to plug this into a computer or something. Cables, man, they are the culprit. I can't tell you how many times they've been the culprit for me just using a cheap cable. Anyways, no noise problems with IEMs. It also pairs really well with a lot of different planar magnetic headphones, and I think hybrid tube amps tend to do that anyway. It's a nice relaxed sound. It gives you a full thickness down low, which I love. It's an all-in-one unit. Something like this has really made me look and consider some KEFs to put on my desktop because, man, I couldn't imagine like plugging this into some KEFs on how that might sound with that little bit of tubey flavor to it. Just makes me excited to check that out. So, Woo, again, I gotta say, thank you so much for sending this out. I have had a blast with this amplifier. I will be sending it back to you guys. I thank all you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. If so, smash that like button. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to the channel and join my Patreon and support me along the way. I would highly appreciate that. All right, guys. Oh, by the way, I'm going to Can Jam here in just a few weeks. Maybe I'll see you there. I will. See you in the next one. Or at Can Jam if you're there.